Terasa.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to our live stream.
Thanks.
First of all, I miss you.
So I see what you're talking about. It seems like you guys are very happy.
Please speak slowly. You know this.
Okay, my chat is probably just going to be 20 minutes, even if I speak slowly.
No worries. No worries. So live stream is yours.
Right.
First of all, you can introduce yourself, and then maybe you can mention for Tide and our project and our team, and then Flutter. And good luck for you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, by the way, if I share my screen, I won't see this current screen, right? If I share my view.
Yes. You can share your screen.
Let me try. I never used this before.
Okay, I can help you. Dilruba, seni de düşürüyorum.
Tamam.
Bye Dilruba.
Bye.
What happened?
Oh, is that for me to start?
Yeah, you can share your screen.
Okay, hold on. Share my screen. Yep.
Terasa, this is for you.
Cool. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
I'm going to present it.
Right.
Are you able to see the entire screen?
For now, bye.
Okay. Start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay, cool.
Hello everyone, my name is Merve. I work for Pinar. And for those who don't know Pinar or how to
We provide banking service.
Sorry. We can't hear you.
Sorry, should I start from beginning?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's fine. Hello everyone, my name is Teresa. I work for Tide in the Android team. And for those who doesn't know about Tide or who never heard about Tide, we provide banking service for small business in the UK. At the moment, we have reached 150,000 customers, and we are still expanding and growing. And also, I work for Burcu together in my company. She is very nice. Today, I will talk about how to build a clean app using Flutter. Before we start, let me walk you through a timeline of cross-platform frameworks. So I have heard people saying in the past they don't like Flutter because they have tried using 2A or 2B. And none of those tools matched their expectations. And hence that they shut down the door for new multi-platform libraries like Flutter completely. So it's true that through past years, developers have tried different solutions and approaches, right, to arrive to a stage where we have multiple options to choose from. It feels like we are a bit spoiled. So if you haven't tried Flutter yet, don't judge it too quickly. So today I will mostly discuss two things. First, briefly introduce Flutter, and then I will explain my approach on building it with building a clean app with some sample code. And why do we need clean code? Because it allows us to scale, to extend, and to adapt to changes easily. And I hope every of my audience here is aware that Flutter is developed by Google. And this is one of the main reasons I fell for it, because Google has gained my trust in its innovations. But unfortunately, this has also become one of the reasons that stopping it expanding to iOS side. But nevertheless, Flutter has a very big community, and you can build apps using Flutter on many, many platforms. And to use Flutter, you must know widget. It's like a view for Android, but more. So imagine if a view is like a Lego piece, right? Then a widget is more of a complete model. There are two types of widget. So if you are building a static view, and you can use a stateless widget. It's immutable and it doesn't change through its lifetime. And if you need to load data dynamically in the runtime, you need to extend from stateful widget. It keeps track of changes and update UI based on those changes. It's mutable and it can be redrawn through its lifetime. So with the declarative UI approach, you can use code to describe how the view looks like, rather than code the steps to rebuild it. It's very different from Android. So if you want to change the look of the text view, for example, in Android, you need to call set text, set a color. But with Flutter, because the UI reflects to the current state of the app, if the state changes, the UI will redrawn from scratch. So, and because Flutter renders UI very fast, you won't feel the difference from user's perspective. And nowadays, even Android and iOS has both released libraries with declarative UI approach. So if you compare the code side by side, they actually look very similar. So if you know either Swift UI or Jetpack Compose, it might take you maybe 10 minutes to adapt to Flutter. So even saying so, Flutter isn't just UI tool. Dart is a language that you can use for complexity logic. So actually, if you follow the clean architecture pattern, you will mostly use Dart and you will switch to Flutter at the last layer. Now, before we dive into code, let's take a minute to study Italian food. There's no right software architecture or perfect solutions, right? Before you start a project, it's always worth to sit down with your team to design the pasta you like. And you can choose the most suitable one for your project. Either it's lasagna or it's spaghetti. Okay, now I'm going to dive into coding. So one of the most widely used pattern is probably the presentation, domain, and data layer. It allows you to separate concern and focus on current piece of your work only. So presentation layer is where magic happens. It's the most important part of your app because it interacts with users. It doesn't matter how well your logic performs, but the final user judge your app based on UI and UX. So if you fail to deliver this layer, project might just fail. Then moving on, domain layer contains business logic. It's the brain of the application. So when you work at this layer, you can completely ignore UI and the data, but treat them as something will happen magically, and assuming you will have them when you need it. Then one layer below, the data layer. Obviously, it interacts with data. So whether it came from a remote server or a database, this layer is responsible to receive data, to to parse it, to store, and to send it forward. And thanks for my colleague, Dennis. He prepared me this nice drawing. So in Tide, we are using this design pattern in our projects. This drawing is based on Java and Kotlin in Android context. So you see view and view models, right, and activity fragment. But the way we design Flutter project isn't far away from it, because framework might change, but the architecture always stays the same. As you can see, we have narrowed down scope and we divided responsibilities into zones. So depends on the complexity of your module, each layer might be divided even further down into packages. And you might wonder why a repository has appeared twice in data and in domain. This is because it interacts with data. So the actual implementation of it stays in data layer. And in order to hide this implementation, we provide an abstract class of it in domain. This comes from the golden rule of high-level modules should not depend on low-level modules, but both of them should depend on abstractions. And this is an overview of my project that I'm going to show you today. Because I work for a financial service, so I'm going to build a list view that display account transactions. And of course, I'm not going to do live coding today because we all know how it ends. I know some developers prefer to divide modules into, like, say, a data module, a domain module, and UI module. And each module might contain like 100 features. But actually, in my opinion, it's better to build a feature module with its own ecosystem. So for example, if API service change, you don't have to recompile the entire code base. And it doesn't matter which layer you begin with, but I prefer to start with data layer. And in this example, I'm using Chopper libraries for HTTP requests in this example. It's very close to Android retrofit library. As you can see in the API service, we have an item. It's called a future. So it handles a sync task as a replacement of Rx or coroutine in Android. A future has 3 states: incompleted, complete with values, or complete with error. So how the flow works is like this. You press a button, and within the same thread, the handler sends out her HTTP request. At the same time, you're going to receive a future object. But in this moment, this object is empty and it's incomplete. And you want to be patient and you want to wait. Eventually, you will receive some data in a callback. You can either pass it using, you can either pass it on to the next level using the keyword await, or you can consume it in the same functions, in the same code base, using the with the keyword then. Another thing I want to talk about in data layer is the DTO model, the data transfer object. It's very unique in data layer. It follows the same structure of your JSON. So one DTO might contain multiple data objects, and it's perfectly fine because we will filter it, we will parse it using data mapper. You might add a mapper in every layer, but it's essential for data layer. This is because the API endpoints wasn't designed for one screen or one flow. So you might receive a very big DTO model. Then you need to remove fields or values irrelevant for your current module or your current logic. This is what the mapper is used for. Also, for the app that requires caching or database storage, you will only need to cache what is needed. So now we finished data layer. Sorry, we haven't finished the layer. We are in actually the action part of data layer, the repository. In this class, it provides clean API, so the app can retrieve easily. It contains logic of the data, whether it's from a server or from a database. So the layer above can request clean data without worrying whether it was where it was fetched or how it's been made. A repository is made of API service and the mapper. So here you will make request to server to receive data, to map it and to pass it on. Also, you might have noticed actually up to this point, we are using Dart only and we haven't even mentioned Flutter yet. And the code I've shown looks not far away from like Java or Kotlin, which is nice because the interaction to framework should only occur at the outer layer. So now we finished data, we move on to the domain layer, the brain of your app. So usually you will have 3 items in this layer: the model, repository, which is interface, and use case. So as we discussed already, domain model different from DTO, and it's structured to suit your app logic, not to your what your backend is. A domain model isn't just a plain data holder anymore, not like your DTO. It actually contains data and some actions and some behaviors. For example, like a now check. The repository class in domain is abstract. This is to prevent direct access of your data from outer layer. And yes, actually, use case is always debatable of if we should have it or not. It's true that sometimes a use case might look like a duplicate of a repository, like in my code in this example. You don't have to include it, but even for one line, it's better to have it for code consistency, and also it protects you from future UI data changes. It becomes useful when you need more than one repository in your use case. Say, because one repository equals one DTO entity, not per screen or per flow. So you might have multiple repositories to draw one UI, and without use case, your view model will be overflooded. And finally, we can talk about Flutter, but I'm going to actually keep it short. So there are plenty design patterns you can choose from on UI layer, like MVP, MVVM, block, or just use case. And block stands for business logic controller. And which one to use is entirely up to you. And I'm not going to discuss or compare UI design patterns here because this is another big subject. assuming in the presentation layer, we have the data and we can use them to display our UI. And to be honest, build a list view in Flutter is so much easier. We don't need XML, no adapters, no view holders. So on the right side is the final result of my account timelines. So let me give you a summary of few rules to keep your code clean. First, we use dependency inversion principles to isolate domain layer, and the outer layer can depend on inner layer, but not vice versa. Depends on the size of your project. If you build an app with just one package, right, a very small application, you can split the layers with classes. So you have a data class, you can have a domain class and a UI class. If your app is slightly bigger, you can split your layers with packages like a data folder, a domain folder, and a UI folder. So, and then if you build an app with multiple modules, it's better to have a feature module, and in each module, you contain a data domain UI in its own. So as the first graph shows, not the second one. Okay, that's all I want to discuss today. Thank you for listening and joining me.
Great. Thanks for sharing your experience. That was really great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. We want to add anything, or we can finish it?
Yeah, I finished my talk. If there were any questions, I can answer. If not, yeah.
Okay. Let me ask Arkadaşlar sorusu olan var mı? I think there's no questions. Thank you, Terasa.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.